So the Honey Badger has left F1 for now at least, and I think that's kind of sad. We all saw it coming in a way, but it's the manner in which it was handled that leaves a bit of a bitter taste. Daniel Ricciardo was maybe not in the very top tier of F1 drivers, but his charming personality will be surely missed in the paddock. His career has not been too bad either, showcasing some incredible overtaking guile and winning 8 races, with the Monaco Grand Prix being one of them. In hindsight, leaving the Red Bull family in 2019 was a mistake, but you can understand he wanted to see if he could become the leading man elsewhere instead of sitting in Max Verstappen's shadow. He luckily got paid good money at Renault and did score a few podium places. His next move to McLaren surprised many at the time, but it did yield an unexpected last victory at the 2021 Italian Grand Prix. Just like the year before with Pierre Gasly and AlphaTauri, Monza spawned another surprise winner in the form of Daniel Ricciardo, who was actually struggling to adapt to the Papaya team. The win was also massively important to McLaren, as the Woking team had not won a race for almost a whole decade, the last one being Brazil all the way back in 2012. Unfortunately, it would prove to be the last showy from the Honey Badger, as his results dramatically tailed off thereafter. He got dropped from the McLaren team after the 2022 season, and it looked like the end of the road for the likeable Aussie. After being picked up again by Red Bull to be their third driver, he got another chance at redemption at one of his old stables now named AlphaTauri, replacing a floundering Nick de Vries. Even though Danny Ric had to be substituted himself for a few races after his crash at Zandvoort, he did earn another full-time drive for 2024. At the newly named RB Visa Cash Trap Money team, he did perform okay in the beginning of the season. However, Red Bull expected more from the Australian, and in the end he was thus unceremoniously dropped from the team after the Singapore Grand Prix. Now that he's saying goodbye to F1, I thought it would be the right time to have a look at the car that brought him his last win, the McLaren MCL35M from the 2021 Italian Grand Prix. Together with the car, I also have a half-scale helmet from that race. If you would like to see a review of that, click the card in the top corner here, or click on the video link at the end of this review. But now let's check out this model car. So the model I have here is the Minichamps Diecast 1/18th version. This one is a race-specific model limited to 1200 pieces. A special CK Model Cars version is also out, with their bespoke box art packaging being the only real difference, and their model is limited to 222 pieces. Rival brand Spark also made a 1/18th resin version of this car. Just like the Minichamps versions, it came unbranded and no decals were included with either model. The Spark model does come with some other extras though, like the BWT sponsored Park Fermé No. 1 board and of course a pit board. Both brands also released other versions of Riccardo's MCL35M, but of course this Monza winner is the most interesting one. The box of this model then is nothing special really, it's just the standard black window checkered flag packaging Minichamps regularly uses. There is a McLaren logo printed on the top though. The model's info then is printed on a sticker on the side flap here. And the bottom has all the usual brand info and licensing stuff, as well as the model's barcode. The base the model is set on is the usual stuff from Minichamps, with a simple grey backing card. Normally a plastic mold is also set underneath the front wheels to keep the model in place. Let's have a closer look at the model now, and actually at first sight I'd say it looks pretty good. Now you're not getting blown away by any means, but it all looks very decent. There are the usual grievances you get from Minichamps models from that period, like the cascades on the front wing planes that don't consist of individual pieces. Minichamps have also missed the tire sensors on the inner part of the front wing end plates. The rear wing then also has poor detailing, which is a bit disappointing given there are only two straightforward elements in the main plane and the upper flap. To be fair though, the Spark model also doesn't have any cuts in the front or rear wings. All of these gills then in the end plates, they are not cut out either, nor are the ones in the very complex bargeboard area. Another typical Minichamp thing is the detailing on the figurine. The helmet has the dreaded brown visor, which of course they have changed in the meantime on the later models. The belt details are also a letdown, with them just being decals and no 3D belts with photo etch parts like featured on the Spark model, for instance. And this is also where this model, I think, falls short a bit. Compared to the Spark model, it simply lacks the finer details. Some examples are the detailing on the front wing, these missing grey decals on the center part, the orientation of these nose horns, where on the Minichamps model they point upwards instead of being horizontal. The bargeboard area is better too on the Spark model, with cuts in these gills as I mentioned, and an added fine metal strut which is missing on the Minichamps model. The belt details I already mentioned. The floor detailing is also wrong, with these 3 small turning vanes that shouldn't be there. Now, to be fair, again, these are also featured on the Spark model, so both models are actually wrong here. Another small metallic strut is again not featured on the Minichamps, connecting the floor and side pod. And then the color of this long pull rod arm is also not correct, but this is actually a bit of a difficult piece to judge. On the Spark version it's metallic colored, as you can see, which is also not entirely correct. On the pictures that I could find, it seems this piece should be a bit of both, let's call it metallic black. The detailing on the back then is also lacking compared to the Spark model. The exhaust pipes aren't as refined, and the crash structure attenuator is missing some smaller parts like these support rods and these little wings, and some carbon textures. Missing on both models is the metallic color patches on both the diffuser and then the bottom of the rear wing end plates. On the back of those end plates, the rear light LEDs are missing too on the Minichamps version. Even with that whole list of negatives, I still think this model is decent, as I already mentioned. Although it's lacking the more refined details of the Spark model, I still get a good overall feeling from this Minichamps version. I think they've done a good job on the race specificness of this model. All the right decals and major aero pieces are featured. For instance, the low downforce rear wing, which is so typical of Monza, is nicely replicated. They even have noticed a small detail where the top part of the upper rear wing flap doesn't align with the end plates but is a bit lower due to the shallow chord. I already mentioned the parts that were better on the Spark version, but that model has some flaws too compared to this Minichamps. First of all, for some reason this little decal here in between the antennas on the top is missing on the Spark model. The Minichamps version also has a steering wheel that is modeled after the real thing and not a generically shaped one like the one on the Spark. The rear wing end plates then show a different aero configuration on both models, with these nice cutout teeth on the Spark and these more swooping shapes on the Minichamps. And although it's nice that Spark did make these cuts in these teeth, the Minichamps version is actually the correct one. Finally then, the way this wing piece in front of the side pod intake is shaped looks much nicer too on the Minichamps model. The panel gap is less abrupt than on the cut Spark have made on their model. For sure the Spark model is more finely detailed, but even with all its flaws and minor mistakes, the Minichamps is still a decent model car, as I said. Also, I'd wanted to mention the interestingly shaped side pods, and this is not really a plus or minus point on this model, but something I found intriguing and only really noticed now. But look how small the side pod actually is. Mercedes has these famous zero pods a year later on the 2022 W13, but here on this McLaren they're actually also pretty much non-existent. It's really only the very small letterbox intake that sticks out, and then it fades away quickly again in the body of the car. The model then needed a few modifications, mainly because it was released without the nicotine pouches branding on it. These decals are sometimes provided with the model, but this was not the case for this version here. The Spark model also doesn't have any additional decals that come with the car. So I had to source aftermarket decals then and applied those to the model car. And since I was busy modifying the model, I then also added the extra tire wall details like the barcode decals and the handwritten tire markings. And these additional details really spruce out the model, I think, and with it now fully decaled up, this model car already looks a whole lot better. For some reason Minichamps now does add the vape and nicotine branding as standard on the newer McLaren releases. On the Spark versions they are still missing though, and they don't provide decals with the model car. This model by Minichamps thus is not an absolute belter. It has some flaws, and if you prefer models that are a bit more finely detailed, then the Spark model is better for sure. I still don't think this one is bad though, as for me this Minichamps model actually looks better overall, although I couldn't really point out as to why this is the case for me. When you're collecting stuff you don't always make rational decisions, and that's what makes this such an interesting hobby in the end. So with that, I don't think this model car is for everyone then. Certainly with the announcement that Danny Ric is basically leaving F1, and thus this being his last F1 race winning model, it will appeal to fans of the Honey Badger. And before McLaren's sudden resurgence, I thought McLaren fans would also like this model, as it seemed it would be a model of their team's most recent win. But that's now not the case anymore, of course. At the very least, you could see it as the first win in the Zak Brown era at McLaren Racing. So this was my review of this Minichamps Mclaren MCL35M from the 2021 Italian Grand Prix, Daniel Ricciardo's last hurrah. Let me know what you think of this model car in the comments and how you feel about Daniel Ric's F1 exit. As always, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did. Don't forget to check out the other content on the channel, like this review of his mini helmet from the same race. Subscribe too if you haven't already done so. Take care, and I'll see you again in the next one.